Hello, everybody. I am the proactive caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved ones. I've learned this all too many times, still having to learn it. But today I want to talk to you about caregiver energy by means of detoxing and supporting our gut, because this is an area that we dismiss and sometimes don't even realize how much it affects us. I know I didn't realize it until I had to have my gallbladder removed. And at that time, doctors then told me it was hereditary. Well, now what I understand about heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and even dementia, I no longer believe it's hereditary. I believe it's more linked to habitual tendencies, not hereditary issues. I place less concern on genetics now than I ever did before, but I know I can't dismiss it 100%. I invited a fellow caregiver, Jezek, to join me today to share her story today because she has a special interest in gut health and the way it is laced through scripture. Megan is a home engineer, a wife, and a mother of 3 beautiful young boys. With a small budding website for gut and spiritual health called The Intelligent Gut, Megan is in pursuit of living in the Creator's intended design for us. She has a strong desire to share her health journey because she wants to encourage others to link together the spiritual and the physical. I love that because that's what I have learned in this process. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
So this has been a journey for me, and I can only imagine it's been a journey for you. With your interest in gut health, I can only imagine it started on a personal level.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you tell me how that came to be?
Yeah. Growing up, I wasn't a sickly child, but I had stomach issues. Like I would get up in the night multiple times a week sometimes and vomit and just be uncomfortable all the time. And so my parents, I mean, they didn't know much, but my mom was always very careful with like when I would have sugar or if I would have a protein before, because we just had no clue what kept triggering them. So then made it through college and then ended up being hospitalized, going to the ER for terrible stomach pain, and just there was nothing that anyone could explain. They thought it was my gallbladder, so I was going to go in for gallbladder surgery, but it wasn't my gallbladder. They thought it was just anxiety, which I'm pretty certain that definitely played a role with it. But I had eczema, and just in pain, just kind of unexplained pain, constipated for days on end, things like that. And then I had my babies, and I had twins, and that kind of wiped me out, to say the least.
Wow.
Just the physical demands of children, and food was no longer like a friend to me because food was what was triggering it, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was gluten, so I took gluten out for 10 years. Thought it was the dairy, which it was the dairy, but so I knew that was definitely a link for me. But the gluten, I had really good success with it for like the first 5 years, and then after having my children, it was not working for any. Like the symptoms came back.
Oh wow.
The eczema was back. Like I was out of control. I had no clue. So I surrendered and was like, God, I clearly have no clue what I am doing, and what I am doing is not working. So I asked for, healing. Like I wanted the miraculous healing. And he just answered me and was like, I have a healing journey for you, and but it's a journey, because if I don't show you where it comes from, where it stems from, then I can heal you, but you're just going to go right back to it, kind of thing.
Exactly. That's what we do.
Exactly. So I accepted that. And I just started like it started like on Instagram where I saw someone promoting a vegan book. And I was like, okay, I had been vegan for a while when before I moved to Texas. I moved to Texas 10 years ago to be with my husband. And I just couldn't really live that lifestyle here. I came from LA.
Yeah, there's a lot of barbecue.
A lot of barbecue. And he, he was a bachelor, so he would cook for me and he makes great food, but it was all just very heavy meats and things like that. So I kind of gave in to that. And I wasn't really vegan for anything more than like, I was just trying something to figure it out.
Right.
And I wasn't a healthy vegan, because you can be a junk food vegan because potato chips are still vegan. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
it's funny.
So I wasn't living it from like a health perspective. I was just taking things away to see what was bothering me, and nothing was really adding up. So I found this people promoting this vegan cookbook, and I looked at it, and like the foreword was from this Dr. Will Belitsky, and he's a gastroenterologist, and he and this author had said that she had gotten her inspiration from his book Fiber Fueled, and she's like, if you have any gut questions or interest, this is the place to go. And so I found him and I found his book and I gobbled that up. And I tell everyone he wrote the book to me because it was, hey, do you have this problem? Well, it's probably this. And let me tell you why. And he like explained to me where my eczema was coming from. He explained to me like the constipation and how to get rid of it and how it affects your body like on a long-term scale and things like that. So I just started diving in. But the thing with gut health is that you kind of got to take it slow because it's your gut microbiome. So if your gut bugs are not there to support your diet, you're still going to have flare-ups. You're still going to have things. So true. I first dove in 2 feet and then had to take a few steps back. That's another thing God's working on me with is the baby steps of things. Because I am like, yes, we're doing this. That is me now. And he's just like, nope, take it back. You still got to do the baby steps. So I started by trying to add gluten back into my diet because what they call him Dr. B is what he goes by. So Dr. B was saying that if you don't have the enzymes or the gut bacteria to break it down, then you can't break it down basically. Right. So you have to very slowly add it in so that your body, so that the bacteria can multiply and then give you the ability to process it. Because I did not have celiac. He said that if you do not carry the gene, then there is no medical reason why you should not be able to eat gluten. And when I say gluten, I mean like whole grains. I'm not, because the thing that worked for me going gluten-free was I took out processed foods. You cannot eat processed foods because they are all laced with gluten. Everything. I couldn't eat out at fast food restaurants. I was such a pain to all my friends and family.
I'm learning that now myself.
And so it did help but of different reasons. Like I thought I was just strictly reacting to the gluten, but it was because I wasn't eating all the processed foods. Right. So that was what was working for me at first. So then I had to slowly go. So I would do like a bite of whole grain toast, and always like organic and things. And then I would do a little bit of pasta and just slowly add it in to where I didn't get the uncomfortable tummy and things like that. I would get really itchy too. Like my scalp would really itch. Like that's just like one of the flare-ups I would have was just being really itchy all the time. Even if it wasn't eczema. It was just like I was just like itchy, like my arms, and I was really fidgety with those kinds of things. So it started with that, and then so his whole teachings and things is that you need 30 plants in your diet per week. So that includes the whole grains, legumes, fruits and vegetables, and even mushrooms, because mushrooms are not technically a plant, but they have fiber in them. Oh, right. And so it's just plants and mushrooms that contain fiber. And they have found that that's what your gut likes, and your large intestine, because it goes through the small intestine and the large intestine, and fiber is one of the things that gets all the way down to your small intestine or your large intestine And then that is where the gut microbiome is and attacks um, and gives you all the benefits or the, the negatives to it too. So I started by doing that, and I was having really good success. And then I really started adding in like fermented foods to get the probiotics to add in. And that's something I'm like trying to learn how to do myself too. And that's like a whole other thing of beautiful interest. And then also things like sprouts. Like I started sprouting because there is just such rich information about like broccoli sprouts. They're one of the best cancer fighters. Like multiple times over than just full broccoli. So it's just so interesting. All those little components that just add together to make these beautiful things that I was not eating in my diet. I might have said, oh, I could definitely pull 30 things, but the variety is where the beauty comes in, because they don't even know how many different kinds of fiber there are. But each different plant builds, like, they work together and they build these beautiful things together. And so the more you can add in to your diet, the more robust your gut is. And it influences everything. It influences your hormones. It influences your immune system. It influences your mental state, your moods and things like that. And it has the ability to turn on and off genes.
Thank you.
Which is both troubling and empowering.
Right. See, and that's the part that I kept feeling there's got to be a better way. When I was looking into the information for my mom, as soon as she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, first it was vascular, then it was early onset, and then it was frontotemporal dementia. As these diagnoses kept coming, I couldn't stop thinking, oh God, this is going to happen to me. It's genetic. And then thought, but as I looked and observed her and her way of life and what she was eating, how much she was sleeping, and all of the other issues she was or wasn't doing or problems she was having, I kept thinking there's got to be a better way. This can't be genetic.
Yeah.
It just can't. And sure enough, looking into this,
they found that only 20% of diseases are related to your genetics.
See, and what I'm understanding now, and what I was saying before, I don't believe it's hereditary anymore, because if your great-great-grandparents ate a certain type of food that wasn't healthy or excessively, or ate a certain way or prepared food in a certain way. For my family, it was fried pork chops in vegetable oil, fried plantains, it was just the things that taste good but aren't good.
Yes.
And so if you're passing that down traditionally, and that you keep teaching your children how to cook or what to eat, then is it really hereditary if you're just passing down? You're just passing down habits.
Yeah.
So
well, and it's interesting because all of this, like, it was after World War II that we started the convenience eating of the processed foods and the frozen dinner. So it really was like our parents growing up, my parents grew up in the 50s or were born in the 50s and things like that. They weren't eating like this until much later.
Right.
And it became, oh, look, you could put this in the freezer and then you can eat it anytime and it's already pre-made, or you can stick it in the microwave and wow, look at this, you got a full meal. But as time's gone on, it's like they've added more and more, and they have all the tricky words like natural flavorings and things, which are loopholes into what
Which is so misleading.
It is so misleading. And even the exact same product in Canada and the US have different ingredients.
Yep.
It's just, we've just taken away awareness of those things, and we accept the convenience because our lives are busy.
Right.
And we're, we put value in things that cause us to devalue things that I just see it as like the enemy's ploy. Like it's just taking a step back and being like, I see what you're doing there. Like,
yeah, and that's where I feel like the enemy steps in, where they're contributing to, like, for example, the heart industry is supporting beef, or vice versa. The beef industry supports the heart. And it's so frustrating when I think about it, because we could be changing our dynamics of how many people are experiencing cancer or how people understand what causes diabetes and heart disease in the first place. But instead,
Yes.
it's this capitalistic, like, we're not going to tell them the truth because then our stocks will go down.
Yes.
And that's why I feel that it's up to us and others like us that have experienced these issues and have learned better ways
Yes.
to live.
Absolutely.
So as you've continued to figure out what to do, you have little ones now. And I know I was a finicky eater. And as I got older, had my own kids, my little ones were finicky because I taught them the convenience.
Yes.
You know, I drove through the fast food lanes because it was, here you can have a fry, here you can have some piece of chicken, and you can chomp on that and be satiated and quiet while I'm driving and no screaming and crying. But I had to break that habit. So how do you do that with your little ones?
So what is beautiful about the gut microbiome is that it is what dictates what you want. So when you're feeding them fast food and French fries and things, they're telling your brain that, or they're telling their brain that that's what they need to crave, because the gut microbiome is being fed by the food that you eat. So if you continue to feed the bad bacteria, it's going to scream louder than the good bacteria.
Yes.
So how I started was, so I have 2-year-old twins and I have a 4-year-old, and my 4-year-old, I mean, I've only really been on this journey like the last year and a half. So this is still relatively new for me. But I decided that his school lunch was going to be my first attack, because he cannot eat anything other than what I send him. He's in preschool. They don't do the cafeteria.
Right.
So I took that as my opportunity to start just loading him full of foods.
Good.
So even if he didn't eat anything or just ate one thing, I knew that he was still eating something of value to him. Right. Smoothies are my best friend.
Yes.
Because they're beautiful because they still contain the fiber. So I can get blueberries and raspberries and bananas and I mean, like, I can spit 15 things in there. I can give them charred with mustard, greens and spinach and kale and flaxseed and chia seed, and just give, I mean, I'll even put like little cashews and things in there, and they gobble it up and they think it's the best treat ever because it's sweetened by fruit and dates and frozen mangoes, and which are one of the best constipation things. You know what I mean? So I did that, and then for dinners, I just tried kind of changing our favorites into something that they would like. I tried with mac and cheese first, which was a terrible idea.
Yes,
it was a terrible idea. My husband is like, this is not going well. So then I just started, and I was not a cook. Like my husband gave me one of the best compliments because I hated cooking because food was not my friend.
Right.
I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I was always hungry and I liked eating foods that I really liked, but thinking about cooking myself a nutritious meal was not something that I felt I had, basically, what am I trying to say? Behavior. Like it wasn't something that came easy to me. And so I would rather just not do it. And I would rather just, throw chicken nuggets in and make it that and things like that.
I did that too. I think we all do that because it's the easy thing.
And to not have the know-how to walk into it, you're like, then I have to figure out how to do it. And then I still have to go and do it.
Right.
So I really had to break myself of the convenience. And I was, through like my prayer with God every morning, I would just be like, I have to make a change, and we have to start somewhere, and learning new things are hard, but I can do hard things. And if you're guiding me, then I know that it's going to get easier, and I'm going to find you in those things.
Right.
And so, so I just started finding cookbooks I liked. So one of the ones that I found, Dr. B, was called Plant You, and it's just simple. It's so simple. It's not like these 600 ingredients, put them in the oven for 3 hours and then braise them here. Like, they're easy. It's like, put kale, basil, and some lemon in a blender and make some pesto and put it on top of whole grain pasta and have it be delicious. Things like that. So then, per my husband's request, he's like, can we just keep things simple? Like, just give them some quinoa with some, some sweet potatoes. Let's just see how that goes first, instead of trying to change our favorite dishes to be this healthy thing. And just over time, they just kind of caught onto it, and it wasn't a fight every night for dinner, because it was.
Yeah.
It was discouraging.
Yeah.
My kids did not want to eat it, especially my 4-year-old. He's just like, Mom, what is this? And I just kept at it. And, you know, because you're worried about your kids going to sleep hungry. You're worried about them not getting what they need. And at the end of the day, I'm like, I am giving you options that are very valuable in the nutrition, you know, very nutritiously valuable. And so if you don't eat anything but this, I know that you at least got this, and you will be hungry and you will eat. So I just had to constantly make sure that I was offering healthy options. And that would look like, you know, getting little cupcake holders and maybe putting like some celery in one and some carrots in one. And I mean, my kids have started eating radishes and bok choy and things like that. And I would just leave it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they would just come and grab them, you know, just on the fly. And then they started doing that more, and then I kind of gave him a little more freedom in the fridge, and you know, and then my 4-year-old especially, he really wants to help with dinner now.
Oh, nice.
And so
even better.
So when he wants to help, his 2 little brothers want to help. So I have them all 3 lined up, and I'll just give them little little plastic knives, and I'll give them like a little piece of bell pepper, and I'm like, okay, cut this up for me, and they're just eating it the whole time. And so, and I'd heard that as like advice from someone, and they were just like, just let them eat while you're cooking. And that way, if they don't necessarily eat it all at dinner time, you know that they were still getting it.
Right.
And there's good information that shows that children will eat, like, I think it's 34% more vegetables if they have helped you prepare them. And just like see where they have a chance to
interact with it. And that's interesting, because it's not just a plate that goes in front of them all of a sudden. They're looking at it going, ew, what is that? Because I know when I saw spinach cooked when I was young.
Yeah. I still am not a fan of cooked spinach.
Yeah, especially not in school. I know that they tried to do healthy things, but with their soybean burgers and fake cheese. Yeah. But looking at it, it was like, ew, gross. And so what do? Potato chips.
Yep.
The other junk food, the
easy open up snacks that you'd rather have. So yeah, and we're evolving and we're doing better, and you know, things like that. So I don't do juices and those things. I've had a lot of people ask me about the juicing thing, and it just doesn't hold the fiber. If you don't have the fiber, then it just goes straight to sugar, and it gets absorbed in your small intestine, and it doesn't even make it down. But it is such a better option than a soda or things like that. So if that's a part of your diet that you enjoy, like definitely be a home juicer as opposed to that. But it's the fiber that you need. So the smoothies are kind of king for us, because it's full of fiber and it's all the things, and they enjoy it.
But even as a home juicer, you can still get your kale and spinach and blend it with pineapple and, you know, oranges or something that would naturally sweeten it.
Yes.
So that you are getting, they do get their little juices. And then even, because I know our youngest had some constipation problems growing up. And one of the things the doctor suggested was Cairo syrup.
No
Adding
way.
that to his milk, the bottled milk, yes. Or putting Cairo syrup in his juice, which was already sweetened, to help with
the getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just didn't.
Our Pete is always like, just give him a little apple juice. I'm like, okay. But I mean, doctors are not taught nutrition.
No, I feel like that's where we're butting up. Well, the doctor didn't say this, or doctor didn't say that. And
I mean, they can't know everything, but if you look, like the guy who wrote How Not to Die, Dr. Michael Greger, he talks about in his book, like his grandmother getting saved. Did you read his forewording of like why he did this?
Yes.
Of just his grandma was going to die of heart disease. She like got wheeled into this like food rehab that they kind of saw on TV. And walked out 3 weeks later and lived to be into her 90s based off of these changes that they had.
He talks about the Alzheimer's and dementia is what he talks about. I love the way he breaks it up. It was support for the book.
Sorry, I was speaking about their how much schooling they get at medical school
Yes,
based off of these
yes.
things. So he specifically picked his university because it had the most nutritional units that he had to take, and it was 21.
Wow.
Like, they
Wow.
learn nothing about nutrition. They learn chemistry. They learn how to give you pills and things
Right,
like that.
right.
But they do not have a foundation of food as medicine. And they've just totally, I mean, I'm just astounded. Like, we have friends that are physicians, and I've gone head to head with them before. And I'm like, I don't know if I can talk to you about this.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you're educated and you're coming at me from a completely different, perspective that
Right.
I just don't agree with. I just.
I know. I've had arguments with my family when it came to care for my mother. And before I understood any of this, my argument was always, the doctor said.
Mm-hmm.
But then after a while and going to experience even my own issues, because what brought me to gut health was hormone therapy, wanting to avoid the traditional approach with hormone therapy,
Yes.
and then understanding that I could actually balance my hormones with my food because I can keep my gut healthy. And since I've been doing it, I'm like you, I've been on this journey for the last year and a half now, and it's been a total positive change that I wish I knew this years before, and that my mother knew this years before, because we wouldn't be in the situation we are now. And I see other families, especially when I'm going through the grocery stores now and I'm seeing the families and the kids that are with the parents, and I'm seeing what's going in the carts, and I'm just like, oh, I wish we could can we reset?
Yes.
Can we just change how we see things, and can we change how information is provided?
I mean, with the kids, like ADHD, autism
Yes.
is all very influenced by their diet.
Yes.
And but at the same time, it's behavioral, for the parents.
Yeah.
And if they don't know differently, they teach them the same eating patterns as well. And these kids just struggle.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you would be struggling like this if you had a balanced diet.
Right.
And even just changing like one or two things out of your diet can have such an impact on your health.
Yes. That's how I had to start changing mine, because I went the opposite way years ago. I was like, I'm going to become vegan just because it's a better, healthier way. So I cut everything right away, and I got sick because I didn't know how to substitute.
Yes.
I didn't know how to change and find healthy proteins in its place.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, put it all back.
Yep.
Let's just do one at a time. And in place of, I started with pork first. In place of pork, there are these things called portobello mushrooms. I was like, what is that? But then I started to experiment and the substitute thing. So just taking one, like you said, one or two things.
Absolutely. And then,
especially once a week.
Gosh, and then the variety that you end up with, and just the flavors. Like, I didn't appreciate vegetables, you know? And I heard someone else say, they're like, I always find it funny that we dress our meat up with vegetables to make it taste better. And I'm like, that is so true. You know what I mean? Our sauces and things, they're all plant-based, and we got to smother our food in it to make it good. So I just always thought that was a funny little point.
Well, and then that's the consideration of, well, I'm getting my vegetables in. It's like, you need a lot more than that. Yeah. So it wasn't until I started working with my nutritionist that I finally started to actually understand that carbs, vegetables are carbs. So when they were talking about, I'm going to cut carbs to lose weight, my mind was, oh, I have to cut breads and pastas and no more of that. But I never considered vegetables as carbs. So what do you think is the healthy, like, how many vegetables on a regular basis, like in a week time? Because I know for me, when they told me I needed so much per day, I was...
Oh, it's daunting.
Yes. I thought, oh my gosh, there is no way I can get that into my diet.
Yes. I have honestly just tried to approach this with as much ease and relaxation as I can, because it is the counting, and because I only ever looked at food from like a caloric standpoint,
right?
Of like, okay, this is this many calories, so I can eat this and this and be within my caloric, my desired caloric number. And so when Dr. B talks about it, he's just like, the more you can have, the better. I know that there are different things like diabetes and diverticulitis, and there are lots of issues that it is in like affected by. So I'm like, go see a professional. Like I'm not giving medical advice, nor am I saying that I can speak to those things.
Right.
But just the more variety that you can have, like I mentioned before, they build just different fiber structures, and they give you more short chain fatty acids, which are what your body uses to suppress disease and things like that. So I don't know if there is a number, but I would just, again, encourage the variety of things, and just always have, not just vegetables, not just the leafy greens, but you have to have the whole grains, like their own like little ecosystem that everything has to be in balance. So if you're only eating vegetables, you're going to have issues because you're going to be deficient in things that the vegetables themselves can't give you, because you need the whole grains, you need the fruits, you need the sweet fruits. If you're craving sweets at the end of the day, it's because your body did not get the amount of sweet fruits that it needed to hit those needs that it needs. So like your body's talking to you. We're just interpreting it as, oh, I need the milk chocolate because it's just my end of day thing. And it's like, no, you probably were starving some of your gut microbiome that needed you. And your body is saying like, we need the sweets, because sugar in fruit is just perfectly packaged in phytonutrients that act as like a jelly gum, so it can get all the way down to your colon and your your large intestine and digest it there, because other than that it all gets in the small intestine. I think I read that it takes like 15 minutes for sugar to be ingested, like once you eat it, for it to be like gone in your small intestine, and it never even gets down to the other parts that it needs to, and your body just starts reacting to it up there.
That's amazing.
As opposed to getting down to your colon where the microbiome is, that they can dissect it and do things like that. But
see, when I worked with a nutritionist, I discovered that I do have celiac. And so I had to switch over to the gluten-free, and that is so frustrating because, like you said, everywhere you go, it's not widely practiced. And so you might find stuff that's in a restaurant that's gluten-free, but it's probably the time that I'm like, I've had salads all day long. I don't want another salad now. I want something else. And then when they do have gluten-free options, it's not all healthy gluten-free. It's processed gluten or processed non-gluten where it's like corn-based, and it's so you have to kind of trek around this and that. But one afternoon I had a meal that had some, I guess I forgot to mention that I needed a gluten-free option because I just looked at the menu and I saw that it had vegetables and meat, and I thought I can handle this. Completely forgot about the sauce that was in there. And within 15 minutes, all of a sudden I felt like I had 2 shots of tequila. It was, the room was just like spinning. And I thought, oh my God, there must be gluten in here. And that didn't start happening until after I detoxed.
Wow.
And trying to get my microbiome back in a healthier balance, and then trying to slowly re-add certain things and trying to find the variety, because that's been my problem. And I'm still experimenting. I'm blending up all kinds of stuff. I never ever thought I would find leeks, which the larger, and blend those in my morning smoothie.
I know, and like what I was saying about the flavors, like I appreciate their flavors now, because I guess I'm not eating the processed meats, and I'm like, wow, this beet tastes good. Like there are things about this that taste good, but that's also my microbiome that I've been tending to. And they're like, yes, we do like beets.
Yes.
You tell her she wants more beets,
Exactly.
So I go real crunchy with my food sometimes, and my husband's like, I am not eating that. And I'm like, bring it on. Like sauerkrauts and sprouts of all different kinds, and, nuts and things. And it's just a delight. Like I enjoy my food again.
Right.
And the variety is endless. Like if you think about like the meats, like there's like pork and chicken and beef and turkey, and like things like that. But There are over 400,000 plants that God gave us.
Exactly.
300,000 of them are edible. And we, as the American diet, eat corn, soy, and wheat. And not only that, but they have genetically modified it or isolated the proteins and completely turned them into something man-made.
Which is why we have all of our diseases.
Which is why we have all of our diseases.
Or dis-ease.
Diseases, yes. Absolutely. So it's just...
That reminds me. So that was another comment. We had a previous conversation before where I actually loved the way you said that God put his fingerprint on us in our gut.
Yes.
And that, could you share
Absolutely.
that?
So we are made up of 5 microorganisms. It's bacteria, it's parasites, it's viruses. There's another one. And the last one is called archaea. And this is a very unique microorganism in that it's not fighting for energy like the viruses and the parasites and things. They're all just fighting each other for the energy of the food that you're giving them. And this bacteria is the oldest bacteria that we have, and you can only find it in like the rifts of the ocean and in volcanoes.
That is amazing.
And yet it's in our gut.
It's beautiful.
It is, because we were made from the dust of the earth, and he literally left his fingerprints there so that we could find it in this day and age and have this information to tie back to him. And it's just so interesting because we know from animal studies that the gut microbiome is passed down from the mother. So when you're pregnant, you're giving your child, that is their starter gut microbiome. And then when you breastfeed, you're giving them more. All fed babies are good, but there is no argument that can be compared to breast milk, because you are feeding your children the gut microbiome to keep them healthy. And there's so much research and all those things. But so we know that it comes down from the mother, but so we know that we have pieces of Eve in us, you know? She gave us that. She was made from that, and yet she's still here with us.
Right.
And it's just so beautiful. But on that topic still, if we're not continuing to eat the foods that we have the microbiome for, they die. They eventually die. They starve out. And so you think about even 100 years, like people were growing their own foods and having that rich involvement with the earth and things like that. And we've just completely lost sight of it.
Right.
So even if our mother had a robust gut microbiome with like our current day diet, we have a lot of work to do. And it's not that it can't be done, because
we have to revive it.
We have to revive it. And one of the tricks that I learned is go to the grocery store, get 30 different plants, get the beans, the legumes, like everything, the whole grains, and you throw them into a blender and you blend them up, and then you put them into ice cube trays.
Yes.
And every day make a smoothie and take one of the ice cubes, and then you're introducing 30 different different plants into your diet in tiny doses. Right. So even if you have maybe an intolerance is different than an allergy. True. The allergy is your body actually cannot process it, and you should not be eating those foods. But an intolerance is you have a threshold to where if you eat over that, you're going to react. But if you eat under it, you're not going to react. So you have to find the threshold, and it's really a gentle way to ease into it, especially foods you've never had before, or maybe you don't want to have, and you're just like I hate eggplant. I'm gonna need to work through the eggplant thing, because like when I was vegan 10 years ago, it was like that was the only thing. You could have eggplant, or you could have rice or a salad, and so I just have never had a taste for it. So that would be one that I would throw in my 30 blender. To get those enzymes so I could, have more variety. But that's just like a really gentle way to start doing things and start to hit those, figuring out your thresholds and moving past them, because it's doable.
It is very doable. And it, even for me, like I said, the leaks, I never thought, but we have to start small. Yeah. And when you start small, you just kind of gradually, because I know the first day I had the smoothie that had the leeks and sweet potatoes and all kind of other vegetables
Yeah.
blended in it. I took the first sip and I thought, that's actually very savory. I never thought of having, because when I had smoothies before, it was always with the fruits and spinach and kale, but I always got the sweet taste more. So I didn't expect that I would enjoy having a smoothie that actually had a little bit more of a savory taste. And it was kind of like, this is like having dinner, but in my breakfast. But then the rest of the day, the energy.
Oh my goodness.
It's incredible because I felt so good.
Yes.
And my stomach, I'm not bloated anymore.
Your body's not in conflict because it's enjoying what you're doing. And when the foods that we're eating, you know, not only are we processing them, but when they're full of chemicals and they're full of disruptors, your body has to fight those. Yes. Like, it's not just doing nothing.
Right.
It's like your body's activated and like there is something foreign in here that we need to pass this baby through and get it out of here. Right. So it's not just about, you know, eating right. It's about not eating the bad stuff too, because it's like, which army you're going to feed, you know?
Yes.
You're going to give the good guys the ones to beat the bad guys, or are you just going to keep
feeding
loading the bad guys up with the militia, you know?
Right. And then you just feel worse and worse and worse. And that's where I realized that by us feeding the bad guys in our gut, that we're feeding the diseases, we're feeding the cancers, we're feeding, you know, the dementias. That's where this last summer, I read an article that researchers were finally coming out and saying, okay, we've looked into, they tried to make drugs work as a resource for preventing dementia or even helping those who have it. They finally came back and said, okay, because those trials are not going well.
Yeah.
And so far what has been out has been proven dangerous. And so they finally admitted saying, okay, it's caused by inflammation, environment, and stress. And that's what took me the longest time to understand, because we know that it causes the inflammation, but what is inflammation? Well, it's the bad stuff that we're giving ourselves. It's causing this reaction that, like you said, it's creating those little bad soldiers that are what the body cannot pass through. It's sticking to the other parts of our organs and eventually harming the brain.
Yes.
So that's something that I feel like if more people can understand that this is a healthier way of life, making sure your gut is healthy. Because if your gut's healthy, your heart's healthy. If your gut and your heart's healthy, your brain's healthy.
Yes. It just the gut brain, like that's what's so beautiful about the gut, and also scary, is that it can go there. Yeah. You know, and not a lot of things can go there. So we have to look at it from like a hopeful perspective of like, I am empowered with this information and I have the ability to stop disease. I have the ability to change my projected outcome.
Yes.
Even if you are in those diseases, like it's just so unbelievable people who can change their diet. And with it comes the mental stuff, because if you're not in a place of loving yourself, you're not able to put that into action by treating your body correctly. Because that, like the stress, you know, we talk about making things easy and just wanting like the quick pill, the quick food, the quick stuff. But it's also like the process that's so beautiful that teaches you so much. And I just feel like we're missing out on so much by just choosing the easy route with things.
I know. And not only that, we're not realizing the cost. We're going for the easy, cheap, convenient thing in the moment and not realizing the cost on the back end.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because at 35, you're not thinking what life is going to be like for you at 65.
No.
But it's this right now that is being a huge indicator of what your life is going to look like at 65, or if you're going to make it to 80 or not. Like they're able to predict like who's going to, I mean, there's like 50% of women in the United States are going to have dementia or Alzheimer's.
Yes.
One of us is supposed to get it in this room.
Exactly. They're expecting, and I saw just another report this morning, they're expecting the numbers. Right now, we're probably teetering anywhere between 6.5 and 7 million people that are battling living life with dementia, some form of dementia. And they're expecting that to be to 13 million by the year 2050. We have got to slow that progress and start changing how we feed ourselves, how we treat ourselves, how we love ourselves. So that's another area that I was thinking, knowing it makes me feel good. You know, I've got God's fingerprint. I know I'm a child of God, but I've got God's fingerprint in me. And then trying to stay away from all the quick fad diets. And, you know, there's the Hollywood diets here or there. There's one that I actually started to look in towards with the blood diet. And it was frustrating when I'm trying to adapt to this gluten-free world. And then I read through, I went and had found what my blood type was. And then I'm reading through and I'm panicking because now my food that just went, you know, all of my options out here just went down to here from gluten-free, that just went down to here based off of blood type. And I thought, surely God didn't have this plan, because he didn't create a world to say this food is only for this type, this food is only for this type, and this food is only for that type.
Absolutely. I know. What I know about God is that he's a God of abundance. He's a God that gives freely and openly. And I had that conversation too of like, am I supposed to be restricting so much? Like, did you mean for me to miss out on all this stuff and then have like the guilt and the shame if I wasn't eating properly because I was seeing it in the physical? And he was just like, I just kept having that too. I'm like, there has to be, you designed me and I could not have been designed this way. Like I understand I understand genetics and I understand behaviors and things like that, but it just felt like an empty place. It didn't feel like he was sitting there with me. And then the more that I learned about like brain health and the blue zones and things like that.
Centenarians. Which are those who live to 100.
Yes, it's the blue zones are concentrated centenarian places around around the world, and there are 5 of them. And in all of them, they eat 90 to 100% plant-based, but the structure around family and around support, that is kind of the difference for me. Like they have a religion that they follow, they have like a deity that they pray to, and they have the best support systems, even though none of them are like in these super affluent places. I mean, one is in Loma Linda, California, which are the Seventh-day Adventists, but they stick together. Like they have potlucks all the time, and they're always together doing church stuff together, and it has a profound effect on their brain.
Absolutely.
And in these places, there is no dementia. There is no Alzheimer's, and that's a reason for that. And they're not eating like these insanely, 600, or that's too much, like 50 plants a week. They're not necessarily doing that. They're like eating rice and beans and having a very strong sense of family and purpose. And that's what's keeping these people alive. It's the structure of, you raise your children, and then you go live with your children to help them raise their family. And it's the generational pass down and the purpose that I need to be here for these children. So I can pass on all my things. And they just care for each other. And that's a huge difference. And it's so beautiful that these places that have almost nothing can have so much just by having that community with each other. So
I agree. And sadly enough, that area in California is the one and only place in the entire United States that is considered a blue zone.
Yes. And it's their belief system, because they believe in the Adam and the Eve diet, that was the diet God had designed us to have. And I believe that their belief system is that after the resurrection, you receive your body back that you had in this life. So if you do not take care of this body, then it's not going to be so great. Or I don't know if it's not so great, but it's not giving glory to the God that gave you this body. And he tells us to treat our bodies as temples, and they take that very seriously. But there's a lot of proof to show that what they're doing is correct.
It's working.
I mean, to live in the LA area and, where there's tons of pollution and like all the things that affect the rest of us, and them to live to be 100. I mean, in the blue zones, there's this, one of the guys, he's I think 93, and he's still a practicing cardiologist, like cardiologist surgeon. He's like, I'm always the assistant, but they always ask me to come, and
That's incredible.
It's incredible.
And it's hopeful.
Yes.
It's very hopeful that it's possible.
It's empowering.
And it justifies that quality of life is what we create.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
and that's where I was thinking, am I crazy when I'm saying I'm not going to live with dementia because my mother, from a family of 10, 6 of them have some form. It's not the same. So it's not to say, well, there's 6 out of 10, they all have Alzheimer's, so it's genetic. No, they have different forms.
Yes.
So that's when I started realizing this is not genetic. There's got to be more hope, and finding, communities like that, that's hopeful. It is very hopeful.
Yes. I think there was a statistic that even just signing up to be a part of some kind of community group, it like lowers your stress like an exponential amount.
Yes.
Just knowing that you're even going to be with other people, and doing something that you enjoy, it's just so powerful. And like in the neuro books, my favorite is, they're called the Brain Doctors, and they're a husband and wife duo that both of their parents struggled with Alzheimer's, and they decided, we're not doing this. And so they dedicated their life's work to helping to prevent it. And one of the main things that they talk about in brain health is music.
Yes.
So like singing or playing an instrument. And I find it so beautiful the way that God calls us to like worship him, and he's healing us while we're worshiping, like in the physical.
Yes. And then you go from worship, and then you go and you share a meal together, and it just keeps, it's like an energy that just keeps flowing through.
And the gratitude of like your food, like praying over your food and thinking about all the hands that had to be involved in making this, and the farmers that grew it, and the people that got it to you, and just the nutritional value that God put into the soil for you. Like, you were considered by him when you eat your food. And if you can just hold that close and know that God did this for you, and you get that gratitude, that is healing in itself. And like, that was one of the things that helped heal my food issues, like my food fears. Was just like, he considered me when this carrot was being grown. He considered me when he was nourishing the soil with the rain and all those things. And it's just like, anytime I go into those deep thoughts, I'm like, it never ends. It never ends. Like, there's always something else that he did, even just towards a carrot, that I'm not even aware of, but I was considered. And that in itself, I'm like, I'm special to him. Like, I'm cherished by him.
It is so beautiful. And it's eye-opening to realize that there is this blessing, and then we have a choice. We have our free will, and we can choose the easy and convenient and the salty, and because that's how I realized more documentaries are coming out. The guy that did the McDonald's one, and then he came back a second time. I can't remember his name right now, but he came back a second time, and he actually shown that fast food is designed specifically. They know how to be salty enough, but not too salty that it's gross. But it's the bad bacteria that they know how. Basically, that's what it's feeding, and so it's eye-opening to say, no, they are not.
They're not stupid.
Their bottom line shows they are not. But that means the rest of the public that are leaning into all of these convenience fast foods, and it's not necessarily fast foods, because sometimes restaurants are not as good either, but that means it's up to us to understand. Yes, we have to understand this so that we can make different choices.
I know. It's so troubling to think like how specific they are with those things. And you're like, you know what's best. And you're choosing the bottom line. You're choosing greed over our health as and that doesn't.
Well, and then they try and turn it onto us that we are making the choice, that you didn't have to choose that. But then it goes back to the microbiome that is causing you to have the cravings. And then it becomes habitual. And then you've done it for so long. And every time that's what happened years ago. Every time I was so stressed at work, I wanted my comfort food for my stress moment. But when I wasn't stressed, then the colorful salads with all of the vegetables in it, was content with that until I was stressed, and then I needed my comfort food to calm the stress or the moods.
Yeah, you have to break the behavior because you go into these like states of almost like trance states where you just do things and then you're like, wait, why did I do that? It's because you're so ingrained in you and that's what you've always done. So it takes conscious effort to be like, I am not eating this. I'm not buying this. This isn't allowed in my house, you know, things like that. And I am not the strictest person. Like I'm not, I wouldn't even call myself like a vegan because I have my fears of food. I don't want to be afraid of food. And when I know something is true, I hold it so tight and I'm like, no, but that is truth. Like it's the true thing. Like you can't, there's no wiggle room. And so I really had to go to the 90% where it's like, eat this 90% of the time and then 10%, you know, your body can make up for that. And it's things like going to barbecues and having a little piece of meat there. Or I have a friend who's from India and she's honoring me by making me chicken because they don't eat chicken every day. They eat it once a month. Yeah. So when I come to her home and she offers me that, it's an act of love. And so I choose those over my feelings on food because that's more important to me. I want her to feel that I'm enjoying it in her home and that
the community.
Yes, the community far outweighs, in my opinion, even the gut microbiome with those things.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, those are just little choices that I make just to stay in our culture as well. Because I mean, as you know, being gluten-free, it kind of blows when you're always like, people are having to make exceptions for you or make something special for you. Like when they're having people over, and that wrecked me. Like I did not like being that inconvenient. So when I started feeling like the gluten wasn't for me, I just was so consumed with guilt of like, oh man, I've had these, like, I don't even know if I can go back to gluten because of all these people's lives that were so considerate of me. And then it's like, oh, never mind, not anymore. And I know that it was like a struggle for them. I had this one friend who's so funny. He's so dear to me, but he could never remember what it was. And he always thought it was sugar. And he would be like, oh, Meg, there's sugar in that. And I'm like, it's okay. But he cared enough to try to remember. And so that was hard for me. So I have surrendered that as well. And I always go back to the Bible where he's like, I gave you a land flowing with milk and honey. And I'm like, that's what that 10% is. It's like, we should not be eating meat all the time. But like in the blue zones, they'll eat it like on New Year's. It's like, they'll do one big thing. And it's just like a one time a year thing. And it's okay. And what's really interesting about when you're eating for your gut microbiome and you're doing it consistently for long periods of time, when you eat those foods like pork that you haven't had in a year, your body's like, I don't even know what this is. We're just going to go on ahead and just get rid of that. And it doesn't do what it does when you're constantly feeding it. And that's the only thing that it has to source its energy from. So then it really doesn't affect you as much. And with red meat specifically, it has an enzyme called TMAO.
Yes.
And it is only in the red meats. And it is it is like the enzyme that gives you cancer, basically, and gives you high likability for it, and it's only in red meat. And so if you're not eating red meat and you eat it, your body won't create the TMAO because it's like, we don't even have the building blocks to make that right now. But as you continue to eat it, your body will start putting it out there. And then that's when your markers go up for all the, I wouldn't say it gives you cancer, but it gives you the zone of like, you're now in the risky zone. So like add in stress and add in other things.
Yes. Inflammation, and everything else. Then
there you go.
Exactly.
So
yeah, that's why I realize now that we are doing it to ourselves. So we can also undo it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not the knowledge of it is so powerful.
So now that you are a happy, healthy mother of three little boys,
Uh-huh.
as they get older, what kind of message do you want them to take with them to, as far as growing with their food
Mm-hmm.
and going to school? Like,
Yeah. Well, luckily, I have three little boys, and I call these our gut bugs, and they just think it is like the coolest thing when I talk about it. And I'm like, well, we're gonna feed the good gut bugs, and my 4-year-old has really taken to that, and he'll be like, Mom, is this gonna give my good gut bugs? I'm like, yeah, good job, buddy. So I just want to give them the foundation of that. And my mom did a really good job. She really did. When I look back on the diet that I had, she always had a salad at dinner. She always had sourdough bread, which sourdough bread is basically the American fermented food,
right.
which is beautiful. So I would have that every night, and we would have chicken or something, but there was always multiple vegetables and things. But then always when I would get sick, it would be linked to like going out to pizza that night.
Oh, right.
My parents' best friends owned a pizza parlor, and so we would go after church on Sundays and go spend time there. And like every single Sunday night, I would wake up vomiting in the night, and I still can connect things like that. So it wasn't until later, like in high school and college, where I had a lot more freedom to feed myself, that things got really bad. But I just want to give them those foundations and get them in the kitchen with me and showing them how foods work together and
Right.
what they like that tastes good. And not even like, we still do Chick-fil-A when my son does something great. We still dabble in those things,
Right.
just not as much. So I also don't want it to be a forbidden thing, because I feel like once the forbidden food happens, that's when they go a little wild, when they have a lot more freedom.
Right. The
So
temptations are there.
yes, and so I just want to give them the knowledge and the home base and be a reference for them and empower them with their knowledge, because they're smart and they get it. And
Yep.
you can say like, hey, when we eat red foods, it's good for your brain. When you eat this food, it's good for this. And so
So good for them to know that now.
yes, and just giving them, like, we talk about eating our colors, and like, did you eat something yellow today? Did you eat something red today? And just getting them involved. I would say that's the best thing that I can pass on to them, and the community that comes from cooking together as a family.
Yes.
And then sitting at the table together
And having meals together.
I mean, the statistics are nuts on kids that have a meal with their parents. Like, even aggression.
Yes.
There's like 40% less aggression in your child if they're sitting down having a meal with you at the end of the day, and just having that community time together, and your ear, and your attention.
Exactly.
It just plays into so much. Like,
Makes a huge difference. And these are all, when you look back at it, I look back at my family life, and some of it seemed like these were just small details, but they were things that I took for granted. I just never thought about it. And my dad always making sure we're cooking and making sure we sat at the dinner table. And eventually, as we got older, the dinner table was no longer a concern, and now we're eating in front of the TV. And then, of course, the commercials are playing, and then we wanted the junk food that came on commercials. Just certain things that I didn't see back then. And it was this programming that now that my gut craves the healthier stuff, now I see the difference.
Yeah. And I would also like them to know that you can always pick back up. This is something that's evolving, and this is something that you can change. I mean, one meal dictates 50 generations of your gut microbiome. Like, that's how fast they're moving. That's how fast they're growing.
Wow.
And so it's good to know that I want them to know that they can just pick up and come back to it. And there's always redemption in it and things like that. So, but yeah, I would like them to know how to cook, what to cook, and then to know that it's okay. It's okay if you mess up, and if you fall off, and if you gain some weight, and if you get a disease, we're here to help you.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's awesome. Yes, and that's one thing that the more I learn now, the more I share with my sons. They're adults, but I mean, they're young adults.
Yeah.
So they still have time to
Absolutely.
make some changes.
And a mother's role, like so many traumas are brought back to like even misconceptions of your mom and stuff.
Yeah.
And just knowing that your mom is cheering for you and is there for you as a support can be just life-changing for these, children and people and us as adults and things. So keep sharing. They value you, even if you might not think it. They deeply value you to their core, to where, you have a big influence on them.
Well, and like me, it's those things that come back later, that it's the light bulb going, oh, that's why mom used to say, oh, that's why dad used to do.
Yes, I love the puzzle pieces that get moved around and you're like, there's the picture.
It's connected.
Yes, it's so beautiful.
This is awesome. Well, so Megan, if there are other people out there, other listeners that want to get some more information or want to follow your health journey, how do they find you?
So like you mentioned, I have a very early website called The Intelligent Gut. And that it's just like a week of menus to help showcase how many vegetables and plants you can get into your diet over a week. But I'm just going a bunch of different ways with it. But that is where I'll probably be posting most of my information and writing about things that I'm finding and giving encouragement. So it's theintelligentgut.com. And then it's also The Intelligent Gut at Instagram. I'm there too. So just getting started, but I'm excited to see where it goes.
Well, I'm glad you got started because we have a lot of work to do.
Oh, yes. Amen.
We have some changes to make and some curves to bring down before, 2050?
My goodness.
It's going to take some time, but the cultural shift has got to start. Yeah, the baby steps to get the shift going, but
yes,
it can happen.
Yes, our voices can be the loud voices for sure.
Yes.
We can put them together.
Because just like your children need the example, so does everybody else.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So thanks for joining me today. This was
my pleasure.
I knew this conversation. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's coming into my life day by day. I have to make sure that I research where I'm going for lunch now or dinner. Food is a part of my life just as much as sleep and work. It's
a necessity.
A very vital part of my life.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for joining us today and listening in about caregiver energy and how you can balance your microbiome. I hope this episode gave you a lot more food for thought. And for more information or even for other episodes, you can go to www.proactivecaregiver.com. And until next time, everybody, be proactive. Take care.